Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning meeting. Sean, Dan, and I are glad to have you back after a weekend of hilarity, frivolity, and basketball galore. This is the morning meeting where we take you through the day, modeled, by the way, on the television network news division's morning meetings, in which they report on the day book ahead, give some analysis. The little surprise twist here with peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace for all. We take your questions. So if you'd like to get in on the conversation, if you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your electronic hand. We'd get to as many of you as we can. As always, we love new people. I already see some new hands up, which is delightful. And if you're watching on X or on YouTube, don't raise your hand and don't put smack in the chat. Amazing to me. You know, Tom Lear, the great comedian, had a line that said, on National Brotherhood Day, there were some people who really did not love their fellow human beings, and he hated people like that. Just amazing to me how many of you, whether you're blue or red, how many of you are so angry at the lack of civility on the other side. Don't be angry at anybody. Just be here to learn. Dan and Sean, happy Monday. How was your weekend, Sean?
I'll be honest. I spent yesterday trying to finalize my taxes. It was depressing. But then we got some great news that we'll discuss later, which got me excited. So it was very eventful. Multiple Saturday activities. We put to rest Tony Dolan, who I noted earlier this year on Saturday. Beautiful service. One of the best eulogies I've ever heard in my life from Vince Haley, who is the head of the Domestic Policy Council to any individual. But anyway, and then did my taxes. So fantastic all around.
All right, Dan, who used to work for H&R Block, are your taxes done?
They are in the process of being done. I spent my weekend furniture shopping, a very masculine way to spend your weekend. My wife and I were getting ready to move, so we were
Really?
Were
What's that
you,
going to mean for the bookcase?
yeah, they did.
good
It's gonna
question.
come. It's gonna come with me.
Were you furniture shopping in Manhattan or somewhere out like in the country?
No, we were downtown. It was lots of fun. It all starts to look the same after a
Do New
while.
Yorkers go downtown, or you don't even go to like New Jersey or Connecticut?
You can. We
can.
chose to go downtown. My wife and I had a day together. It was very
Yeah.
nice.
All right. Lovely. Welcome in, everybody. Again, thank you for joining. Here's what's happening today. The president has two executive order signings at the White House, a closed press one at 1 o'clock, and then in order to mess royally with two-way tonight's start time at 6 p.m. Eastern time, at 5:30 Eastern time, scheduled, he signs executive orders with open press for the White House pool. Put up the White House pool so Sean can tell us who Global Strat View is. The new
You
media.
know, Mark, I literally Googled
Yeah.
that. I'm still amazed. If you go on
Yeah.
Twitter, they've got 577 followers. They've got some interesting content on there, wide ranging of
Are,
opinion.
are they are they are they MAGA as best you can
I
tell?
don't get the sense. No, I mean, like
Yeah.
I was intrigued. I went down a very like stem winding rabbit hole this morning, or actually last
Yeah.
night. And
Yeah.
so anyway,
Okay, well, we'll find out maybe today. Again, two ways ready to take the new media seat, both in the daily briefing and in the pool when you're ready to have us, for those of you watching from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Don't know what the vice president's doing today. Congress is in. They're all the leadership will have meetings tonight. There's a lot of conversation about on the Republican side about what's going to happen with reconciliation. We'll talk about that more this week. The Senate Finance Republicans, to that point, are meeting tonight. The Senate is going to move along the ambassadorship, NATO ambassadorship nomination of Mr. Whitaker of Iowa. That's one of the many things they're doing today. Again, the focus on the Hill will largely be on reconciliation. More about that later. All right, guys, tariffs. So much uncertainty. My big theme for the week, I wrote about it in Wide World of News this morning, is we had uncertainty last week over Signal. There's so much uncertainty with Europe, with a million things, Doge, a million things, personnel. The backbiting on the tariff team is extraordinary. It's like Trump won. The knives are out, and some of that's in public view, some is not. Sean, what is the point of tariff uncertainty? Is it just the president doesn't know what he wants to do, and that's leading to uncertainty that has a downside? We see world markets doing poorly. We'll watch at 9:30 to see what happens here. Or is there a method to the madness? In other words, is the uncertainty on purpose to try to as a tactic?
I don't. I think it's a combination. So that somebody said to me very senior this weekend, it's clearly unclear where we're headed. And I think part of this is that the president enjoys the I don't know that it's attention, but where whether it's industry leaders, country leaders, et cetera, are coming to him saying, "Please exempt us." You got members of Congress. Which completely shifts the focus. I mean, between now and probably Thursday, if not into Friday, that's all we're going to talk about. So he owns the narrative. You have industries, trade groups, CEOs, country presidents, senators, all trying to get 2 seconds to plead their case. And I think part of this is that's if he lays it out and says, here's the this is reciprocal. This is the 201s versus the three. I mean, like, it makes it a lot easier. But if it's uncertain, everybody has to suck up, has to come to him and plead their case. And I think that's part of the enjoyment of this.
Dan, where do you think things stand?
I agree with Sean. I would add that he likes the big reveal. He likes the drama, the build up, what's going to happen. It's the TV producer in him. And so I think the markets hate it. And I think the last thing I would just add is it allows him to declare victory without anyone really knowing if that's true or not. As long as it remains fluid, it remains unknown. To Sean's point, if you come and you grovel and you offer something, he'll just say, like, mission accomplished. And so deep down, I don't think he really wants to do this. I don't think he wants.
I do. Well, that's where you lost me at hello. But I think that he loves, like, tariffs. The one thing that's changed in this is this focus on deficit reduction. Tariffs to him has always been about a level playing field and pulling back manufacturing. I think he's starting to believe that this amount of tariffs is really going to be his saving grace to pay down the debt.
Well, I mean, it's obviously absurd, but okay. Yeah.
All right, here's 109. Here's the president last night on Air Force One making comments to reporters, and one of many confusing things he and his team said, confusing and contradictory, about tariffs.
On the tariffs that you're planning, so you're expecting to hit something like 10 to 15 countries, is that right?
No.
All countries? All of the countries across the board?
Not 10. I don't know who told you 10 or 15
Well,
countries.
we heard that. So we heard that you were going to aim for the 10%.
But you didn't hear it from me.
Okay, so how many countries will be in that initial tranche?
You'd start with all countries, so let's see what happens. There are many countries.
On the Russian?
I haven't heard a rumor about 15 countries, 10 or 15.
So you're starting with all countries?
Essentially, all of the countries that we're talking about. I wouldn't be talking about all countries. It's not a cutoff. And if you look at the history and you look at what's happened to us, you go to certain places, go to Asia, and you take a look at every single country in Asia, what they've done to the United States in trade. And by the way, in military in a certain way. You look at, take a look at trade with Asia, and I wouldn't say anybody is treated as fairly or nicely, and but we are going to treat them. We're going to be much more generous to them in terms of heart. We're going to be much more generous than they were to us.
You said that.
All right, so Dan, we don't know, as we said in the pregame before many joined, the president hasn't decided. So all these lobbyists and reporters paid to find out what's happening, it's unknowable. So you can't know. But do you think we're headed towards, if the choices are jumbo or light in terms of the tariffs, in terms of the amount and the countries targeted, sectors targeted, would you say we're headed towards jumbo or light?
I think we're heading towards light. He's going to threaten jumbo, in 2 more weeks. He's going to say, like, we're making there's some progress. We got to wait and see. So I think, look, it's being reported that even Susie Wiles and JD Vance have gone to him to say, kind of be a little careful here. Like, the politics of this are getting dicey for them because the markets are, and it's not just the markets, it is the business community, big and small, urban, rural, blue, red America, are saying this is a problem for us. And so I think he's hearing it. So he doesn't really want to go jumbo and risk it.
Sean, jumbo or light?
I think closer to jumbo than light. By the way, a couple quick points. The reporter got that pretty. I know why they asked it that way, but it's generally been floated that there'll be a 15% top trading, not number 15, top 15% of trading partners. There's two other issues here that are important to understand. One is the actual tariff that other countries charge us. So India is at, or the EU is at 10% on autos, right? So they can do stuff. The non-tariff barriers are going to be the bigger problem. And I know that that makes people's eyes glaze over, whatever. But for example, the EU uses a VAT. You've got emission standards, GMO factors in the ag world when it comes to Europe. Those are actually going to be the real interesting thing that, again, most people won't fully appreciate in the press, nor will. But where the list is going to be important is, hypothetically, they'll say, Europe, you got a 10% auto tariff, but we're assessing you these additional non-tariff barrier fees because of your VAT, your GMOs, et cetera, et cetera. And that total amount is going to be the problem, because Europe can lower their tariff on autos to 5 or 2. But how you address the non-tariff barrier, which is the sort of more ambiguous aspect of trade, is going to be harder. The second thing is, look for the White House already, whether it's Malaysia or Vietnam, to point to countries that are already willing to take down their tariff number, right?
Yep.
So that, to me, is going to be an easy win for them. But this is not going to be one of these, everybody who thinks, to Dan's point on the lobbyist front, if you're out there telling your clients that this is going to be gone on Friday, you are mistaken. They believe that this is going to be a huge windfall for the Treasury, north of $500 billion, by adding these tariffs, forcing companies to come back, incentivizing people to buy American. So this is to him, again, go back, read Trump in the 80s and the 90s. Again, you heard him in that tape talking about Asia, Japan back in the 80s. This is a long-held belief of his. It's not going to go away quickly.
It'll be jumbo unless lots of countries cave, I believe. And that's different than what I had thought Friday. All right. There's at least 4 people in the administration now for whom knives are out. Very, very much now back to the Trump 1.0 dynamic. That includes Peter Navarro. It includes Lutnick. It includes what's his name? The negotiator. Constantly blanking on his name. Witkoff. And it includes now most particularly Mike Waltz. Wall Street Journal story this morning goes further than anyone has gone previously in saying that Waltz is on thin ice, that the only reason he wasn't fired last week was because Trump didn't want to reward Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic and those calling for him to resign. The story has a little nugget buried in it that says that, in fact, Waltz has used Signal previously in ways that some people found questionable to have communication. And Jeffrey Goldberg over the weekend basically said the guy didn't say in so many words, but seemed to be saying the guy was a source of mine. So, Sean, 2 questions first for you related, and I normally don't ask 2-part questions, but they're so related I feel I can cluster them. Number 1, if it's true that he's a source of Jeffrey Goldberg, isn't that a dangerous game to be playing? I mean, do you think he told the White House? And yes. 2, how do you think he reacts to seeing that Wall Street Journal headline?
I don't think well. So 2 things. One, I think the source is the Achilles heel, meaning that if he, I harken back to the Steve Scully scandal when he was supposed to moderate that panel on C-SPAN and went out and had everybody, including myself. I've known Steve a long time. He's a man of faith. And he came to me and said, Sean, I didn't do this. And I had his back. And I think people do that instinctively and reflexively sometimes when they're backed into a corner. And if what Goldberg said, I thought his comments to me were very interesting, because he had initially said out of the gate, I've only talked to him twice and it's been several years ago. And then when he got asked on Meet the Press, he intimated that it was a lot more than that. Now, again, my views on Jeffrey Goldberg and what a scumbag I think he is. But I think that regardless of that, Trump sees this kind of stuff because, remember, he called Kristen Welker to talk to her about a number of things prior to the interview. So clearly he was going to watch Meet the Press. So he saw Jeffrey Goldberg say that. Then he sees the Wall Street Journal interview or story that Josh Dossey and others put out. This is not a good thing. You used my analogy from the other day. Once you start attriting down from your, call it starting with 100 points, the quicker you go down to 0 is not good. Your hope is to hold that number higher for as long as possible. And what is going to hurt him And I thought was interesting is that Thursday night or Friday, the Politico story that Sergio Gore, Vance, and Susie Wiles had gone to him. It's one thing to have people have your back and the president pissed at you. It's another thing when his inner circle is also not having your back. Now, I don't know if that political story is true, and I haven't asked any of the aforementioned people to confirm it. But I will say it doesn't matter because the president's reading that.
Yeah.
The
Times matched that reporting, or at least claimed to.
Right.
And any story.
And so
with
did Axios.
And yes, any story with Josh Stassi on it means the president's going to read it and be concerned about it. That's one of the bylines he watches closely. Dan, I'm old fashioned. I don't like a national security advisor who lies to the president. And I don't like the level to which he must be distracted here by all of this. How do you see his future now?
I mean, the first question is, where's his cavalry? Does he have anybody? Because I don't see it publicly, and it sounds like he doesn't have anyone privately who is like in his corner the way, let's say, a Hegseth did when the going got rough. He had people who helped him out. So given he seems to have a lack of support on the outside or on the inside, and to Sean, your point, the knives are potentially out with the senior staff, I don't see how he survives. And if anything, I think you're just looking for how and when do you exit. So
well, there's another narrative here. It's not just the Jeffrey Goldberg. Trump, from what I'm told, is a little concerned about having a quote, another Michael Flynn. Like you have an NSC guy come in and within a month or so they're gone. So there is that helps buy some time too.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask both of you guys is, and I don't think it'll happen, but suppose Walz's seat is lost. Does Trump get even more pissed?
Yes.
And that's what I'm wondering, if that may be like the final straw, like, God damn it, now you're causing me even more headaches.
Who will national security advisor be if Waltz goes? Anybody got a name?
I don't know.
I mean, again, I think it's a little for like, I could see a Rick Grenell coming in, by the way, and perform. I mean, that to me, you want to go with somebody
who would run the Kennedy Center.
Well, I do have I do have a little extra time. But I think that he would want somebody trusted.
Yeah.
And I also think that, like, look, Mike, this is a battle that, he spent obviously a lot of time on that plane coming back from Greenland with JD. The question is, did he make a compelling case? Because that's a lot of time to be by yourselves.
I just don't know how you make a compelling case. And I was very impressed with the guy when he was chosen. I think his resume is spectacular. 3 things. 1, he seems to be lying about his relationship with Jeffrey Goldberg. 2, he created the Signal group and you thought it was okay to use Signal for such a conversation. And 3, his team added Jeffrey Goldberg inadvertently, we believe, to the list. Those are 3 pretty serious things. And again,
on the first one, though, I think here's the hard part, and this gets back to I have a hard time if like in other words, at some point you're trying to make the case for yourself, right? So you can say, Mr. President, look at my phone. Here's my history. Like the point is, the reason I bring that up is you kind of alluded to it with Goldberg. If you know that this guy, like that you did interact with him multiple times, and it's therefore not just probably him that knows that, but other people, you're risking a lot going out there. And
it's borderline psychotic. Even if you get away with it, it's borderline
But
psychotic.
that's why I'm saying I don't necessarily. Mike is not a dumb guy. He's a smart operator, and I have a hard time believing. And again, maybe I give people the benefit of the doubt, and maybe I know him well enough, but I just have a hard time. He is a man of integrity who has served his country, and I have a hard time believing that he looks and says, "Hey, I know that Goldberg has all these texts for me, but I'm going to say I don't." Like, to me, that's one.
I agree with you, Sean. I didn't think Michael Jackson had cosmetic surgery. Like, I tend to believe people when they say it. But in this case, I just don't think Jeffrey Goldberg is in a position to have all that happen and to say what he said yesterday if Waltz is telling the truth.
Well, I go back to the Laura Ingraham interview when he kind of froze when she pushed back on him.
Totally agree.
That said everything that
By the way, can I just
he is a man of integrity. He did not want to lie. And so he froze. and he tried to redirect, and that said, you're busted, man. Like, yeah.
Let me
But
just give you, by
tripled
the way,
down on it.
And also, by the way, apparently he used Signal more than once, which is a question that we've asked on this show now for the last week. Would it come out that he or somebody on there has been using this more and more?
Yeah.
According to the Wall Street Journal, he's been using it other than just this one chat.
Again, using Signal to me is not a crime.
Or for national security with sensitive information.
If you're in accordance with the Presidential Records Act and not doing, then that's not a crime. The one thing I will say, I'm going to do a little PSA here. If anyone in MAGA world thinks you're going to get an easy time on going on Laura Ingraham, you are sadly mistaken. That was also, I mean, like, she is not one to be taken lightly.
Yep. All right. Elections tomorrow in Florida, 2 House races, and the Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. Republicans I talked to over the weekend are feeling better about both Florida races. They know close is not comfortable, but close is doesn't, won't matter at this point because of the expectations game. Wisconsin, the Democrats are feeling pretty good about that. Musk went last night, put up the picture, gave away a couple $1 million to 2 lucky Badger state voters, and wore Cheesehead at his event where he was quite effervescent. So Dan, make the call for the 3 races, the 2 Florida House specials and Wisconsin, who will win them.
So I talked to someone at the DCCC. They don't think they're going to win the Florida seats, but they think, as you say, it'll be closer than it should be, and they'll crow that we've got momentum. To your point, in Wisconsin, I think Democrats are optimistic, but they are so spooked about the Trump turnout ability that they are curious, like, are the polls going to be an accurate snapshot, even if it's plus or minus 2 or 3 off of what they're seeing. Also, apparently, according to someone at the DNC, Musk continues to not poll well with certain constituencies that he did in November. If Democrats win, but I will be very curious how the party spins Musk as we go into Doge here. Can they start to create some separation between Republicans in Congress and Elon Musk if he is started to be seen as a liability?
Totally agree with everything Dan said. Sean?
I think we win both Florida races. Florida won the Jimmy Patronis race. I feel much better about than the Randy Fine in the 6. Dan's right. It's probably going to be a lot closer, but enough people woke up. And by the way, just for people on the Dem side, having been on the flip side, I'll say this. Everyone right now, I've already seen some chatter about, well, if the DCCC didn't get in, this is always this teeter where if the DCCC gets in, the NRCC, I mean, you're trying to play this little bit of cat and mouse, which is, I don't want you guys to see us coming in. You can put money in on the ground. I feel for the guys at the D trip, because if they get this within 5 or something, everyone's going to say you should have spent more. And if they did, that would have been a huge tell. But I think Republicans woke up to getting some ground stuff down there. Tom Emmer and Richard Hudson, the NRCC chair, apparently have made it very clear to the Fine campaign to get their act together. In Wisconsin, I'm actually intrigued because Don Jr., Trump himself, Elon now have thrown money and time into that race to turn out people. I was with Reince when we did Scott Walker's first recall. We did obviously, because of Reince's background in Wisconsin, a lot of time in Wisconsin. If they can turn their people out, this is going to be the big issue. It's not easy. It's not cheap. Wisconsin's very, very difficult to poll because of voter reg issue, partisan reg issues. That to me is the wild card. And if you're looking for one tell of all the 3 races, that to me is the one that I'll pay most attention to.
Yep. A win is a win is a win. I will say, and again, if you want to get in on the conversation here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. We'll come to you after one more topic at this point. I will say that, Dan, you laid out the case of how people will react if the Democrats win Wisconsin. If the Republicans win, it's going to be a huge sigh of relief, particularly if this tumult continues over tariffs. Their tariffs matter to the small business people in Wisconsin. They matter to the ag community there. If Republicans can win that seat, despite all the noise over tariffs this week, it'll provide some relief to the White House in what otherwise I think is going to be a very rough week.
Well, and it'll be
fair enough to say that
it'll be very dispiriting to Democrats that thinking they have some wind at their back, that they 100%. Still can't win in Wisconsin.
Yep.
So fair enough to say that do we agree Republicans should win both Florida seats. Democrats should win Wisconsin, right? I mean, is that?
Yeah.
Oh, I look, I
Both,
think that,
they're both good candidates. They're both well funded. I think.
no,
I think
I get it, but I would say that the landscape, I mean, there's a huge reg advantage in the Florida
Yeah.
case. I think the wind favors Democrats right now. I would not like that. To me, is not going to be
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
off. It's off.
yeah.
It's off the year. So Democrats should win it, but it won't be crushing either way. But it'll be noted either way. All right, lots going on in the relationship between the White House and the White House Correspondents Association, the press more broadly. There are viewers of this, members of this community here who would like all of our episodes to just be about the media. We try to dabble, but not make this a media show. So one thing that happened was 104, please. The head of the White House Correspondents Association, Sean's favorite, Eugene Daniels, formerly of Politico, now of NBC, announced that they were getting rid of Amber Ruffin, who had been hired to be the comedian. She's avowedly anti-Trump. They tried to get her to be more neutral in her comedy. She declined, so they axed her. They did not fess up to the original sin in announcing the decision, which is they shouldn't have employed her in the first place. It was a huge mistake, and they haven't fessed up to it. And the press coverage doesn't take that into account. I consider that to be outrageously bad and stupid. Then it was reported over the weekend, originally by Axios, followed up by CNN and others, 103, that in the latest move to take power away from the White House Correspondents Association, which historically has decided who sits where in the briefing room, the White House is now going to decide who sits where, and there's expected to be a pretty big change of who gets to sit where. And of course, sitting closer to the front makes it more likely you'll be called on, easier to kind of dominate the conversation. We will see when and where that changes. There are those who believe that the White House is unstoppable here as they try to take power away from the media. One person who feels otherwise is my friend Ron Fournier, the longtime Associated Press reporter who now writes a Substack that I recommend to you, wrote in horror this morning about the capitulation of the White House Correspondents Association on many fronts to the White House's attempts to wrest power away from them. Ron has a long list in an open letter to his former colleagues in the Correspondents Association of what they should do. Boycott the briefings, cancel the correspondence dinner, join the AP in the lawsuit. Don't go into any pool in which the White House excludes the AP or anyone else based on their point of view. If the president or someone else doesn't answer a question, follow up on the question or let your colleague continue and do more investigative reporting. Dan, what do you think of that list of Ron's in the context of the overall relationship we see now between the White House and the Correspondents Association?
So I'm an outlier here, both I think on this show and in my party. I think this is kind of silly. I don't see the idea that the White House Correspondents Association was this real protector of the public trust. I just don't see. I mean, they were so avowedly anti-Trump. They were so protective of Joe Biden that it's hard to look at the last 10 years or even the last, 20 or 30 years and say that they were kind of neutral, umpires who called balls and strikes on both parties. And therefore the public should have trust that they were operating well in its, to its benefit. So as long as the White House, the current occupant, is what appears to be as balanced in their selection of pool coverage and calling on people in the press room, I don't see the reason, why people are so worked up that it should go back to the way it was.
You may have outflanked Sean on the Trump side here, because I'm not even sure Sean would go that far. Sean.
So a couple things. First of all, I think they should take every suggestion that Ron Fournier put down. Dig yourself into a deeper hole, my friends. Good for you. Take those suggestions, go to the bank, and watch the existence of that organization go even quicker. I think Eugene Daniels could do a better job advising them than Ron did there. A couple things. First of all, again, in your description of how dishonest this was, Eugene Daniels invited that host. He then did a series of interviews with that host where she was very clear about what she intended to do and her view of Donald Trump. She then did another video. This is what kind of resurfaced this, where she literally talks about her hatred of Trump and that when people say, oh, you should kind of go after both sides, she says, no way. So their reaction wasn't some come to Jesus where they said, wow, this was a really bad decision. It was a new video that the quote unquote comedian was doing. And Taylor Budowich, who's the deputy chief of staff that oversees all of this, called it out and said, well done, folks. This is who you want people to come see. By the way, this comedian will still get paid because I guarantee her contract says, you know, unless I do something, whatever, I'm going to get paid. So if you attend that dinner and pay the thousands of dollars per seat, you are guilty. No Republican that walks in the door in there can claim any kind of media bias concerns ever again. If you attend the dinner, you are complicit. With respect to the room itself, this idea of us versus them, it is a taxpayer financed room. This is not their room. The idea that they put their little nameplates on
you don't mean the dinner, you mean the briefing room, just to be
correct.
clear.
When I said the room, it's with respect to the briefing room, it is not theirs. This idea that they believe that they own the room is absurd on its face. It is the public's room. It is the taxpayers' room. And the idea that they put their little nameplates on there and tell everyone else that no one can sit there but them because they've been chosen by their elite little group that shuts out anybody that doesn't meet their criteria is ridiculous. I believe, in fact, I've urged the White House, they should go to open seating. Let anybody sit where they want, like big boys and girls at any normal event. You want to get there early to get a question? You do what every normal person does. You show up early, you claim the seat, and you sit there. But the House of Representatives doesn't even have assigned seating. Why should you guys get it? This is insane. This is a good move for democracy. I'm all for it. I think they should keep going. Kudos to Caroline, Taylor, Stephen Chung, and the team.
Yeah, and I would add too, the idea that the major networks and like the AP should get the front row. It's just not the way the world is anymore. It's not where most people get their news. Like, I agree with you, Sean. Like, just the fact that these like holier than thou institutions think they are entitled to all of this, to me, is ridiculous.
Yeah. So they shouldn't be holier than thou, and they shouldn't be liberally biased, and they shouldn't be avowedly anti-Trump. And the dinner should be an actual celebration of the First Amendment. The one thing that I think Ron is onto, which is correct, and if you're a believer in holding powerful interests accountable to the public interest, is these organizations do need to grow a pair and figure out how to be in solidarity, including organizations that are not liberally biased, to hold the White House accountable. There are things that are happening that are not in the public interest. And I think we just need to differentiate between those things that are, like you guys said, they're not entitled to things as an organization or as individual reporters or news organizations, but they have to have some solidarity to keep there from being a diminution of accountability. And one of the things on Ron's list is good. When I covered the White House, I advocated it strongly. If someone's asking a good question, don't bail out the press secretary by jumping in to ask a different question, even if it's also a good question. Stay, let that reporter stay. Now, there's some subjectivity to that, but it's clear when someone's on to something, when the press secretary or the president or someone else is answering, the press has to be in solidarity, not try to hog the spotlight or take the spotlight, because that only serves to keep there from being answers, which is the point of briefings or press conferences.
But Mark,
that's
I would
one
agree.
example of many.
But that's not a White House Correspondents
I'm just finished. Well, not officially, but it's White House Correspondents Association with all lowercase, or Correspondents Association lowercase. They have to team together, and the bureau chiefs need to come clean. They need to say, "Hey, we covered up with Joe Biden for 4 years. We need to come clean on that. We're hostile to Trump's agenda. We need to fix that." Then they have some standing to say, we have to be in solidarity for the public interest, not for our own self-aggrandizement. If they don't do that, then there will be a diminution of accountability.
That actually goes to the problem. This idea of we're a blob. We have to act together. We have to. On some
institutional things they do.
And if you ask Jackie into their organization,
of course, I don't agree with that. But if you ask Jackie Heinrich or other Fox News correspondents, they would agree. There has to be some institutional solidarity that is not about bias and not about exclusion, but is about standing up to the powers of the White House, whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president. Because if they all hang separately, they will all hang. If they don't hang together, they will all hang separately on some of these institutional issues having to do with accountability.
Then the first thing they should do is allow anyone who covers the White House to join it. The one thing that they will not give up is their elitist rules.
I agree.
And that's so you can't do that. You can't act as a big blob if you're inherently excluding anybody that's not part of your liberal left-wing agenda that wants to ensure sure that the only people who get called on are NBC and AP. That's the problem. It's that they inherently support that. When Corinne Jean-Pierre stripped 440 passes from journalists, they said nothing. This idea that they give a crap about the First Amendment is such a fallacy. They care about themselves and their stupid dinner and their Hollywood elite B-list celebrity cameos that they can get for Instagram. That's it. When Brian Karem and Jim Acosta and everyone else stood up and made fools of themselves, you want them to say, okay, let's let that go on? That's insane.
All right, let's see what CNBC is saying about the markets. Are they off the markets or are they still on the markets?
Peter Navarro,
higher valuation for the combination of these two private companies that Musk is obviously now putting together.
Which do you use? I look Meta AI, I use Anthropic, I use Claude. I check into Gemini periodically, and I find Grok, and I use Grok because...
But you're using the unpaid version of ChatGPT.
I use the paid version. I don't use the super paid.
I use the 20. Is up to date.
No, it's not up to date. No, I wish it were up to date.
Well, today Melius compares Google to Eastman Kodak,
right?
And says that Google even has lost the verb.
All right, just keep monitoring it for us.
Say, oh, I'm going to Gemini my research paper. He's been.
You can take that down. All right, let's go to your questions again. As always, after you unmute, tell folks where you are, what's on your mind. Mr. Smith, Kendall Smith, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Where are you and what's on your mind?
I'm from St. John, Indiana. That is the Democratic stronghold of Indiana, just south of Chicago. And I'd like to, first of all, thank you all, Dan and Sean and Mark. I think this is great. I love it.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the financing of universities through government grants. And I have to admit that I was inspired by the all-in people on this idea. Two questions. The first one is, why can't we have an equity kicker on grants that go from like the NIH or the DoD to universities? So if mRNA technology or CRISPR technology goes public, the government can then get a piece of that 1%, 2%, 3% and go into our sovereign wealth fund to help pay down our Social Security or keep our Social Security strong. And so that's the first question. I'm just wondering, and I apologize if you've already addressed this kind of idea.
Dan.
I mean, I would be concerned if the government were a shareholder, because the government would then make requests, as shareholders do, of how a company runs and sets its pricing and management decisions. So I think that one of the kind of stories that we're starting to see more and more is the number of universities that do amazing research in medical fields, science, etc. And we had a caller come on last week about his daughter, that they're losing it, and scientists are looking at leaving the country to go to other, places to do their research. And we don't want that. We are the world's leader primarily in innovation, in science, and we should want that here. And I think it's really concerning that some of that stuff's getting pulled back. And I know some of the talk is it's just, bureaucrats and admin. That is not true.
Sean.
I love the idea. I think that there's a way that can be done. I mean, I think Dan's concern is well taken. The question is, can you construct something where, if the U.S. taxpayer funds the research for a drug, and if you look, especially like from what I've been reading, and so I'm not an expert, just want to be clear on that, but like the rabbit holes that I've been going, like these GLP-1 drugs, the U.S. government financed a lot of that research. Now these companies are charging thousands of dollars per dose for something that could have a huge impact on America's health, and yet it's way outside the cost structure for most Americans. If we're paying for the research for it, why are we not reaping the benefit in some way, shape, or form? That's insane to me. I think there's a construct as a non-financial guy that could come up with saying, if we pay for it, without necessarily being a shareholder, that the U.S. government is guaranteed X amount of future returns, or so it may not even be an equity stake. It could just be a profit stake, or that there's some kind of guarantee about, going into Medicaid or Medicaid in terms of serving VA. But this is the idea that we as taxpayers are funding all of this research for critical drugs. And then the for-profit company gets the drug, takes it to market, and spends tons and tons of money. And by the way, makes it cheaper for people in other countries to get it when we paid the tab is just, I cannot believe that there's not greater outrage.
Thank you for the question. Thank you.
There's a lot of reasons that the government should not be. I mean, are we going to start making it science decisions based on potential return of profits? I mean, that's science.
No. But if you're going to fund it, what I guess all I'm saying is you fund a research, and the idea is, okay, in the future, this thing hits, we get X percentage of the profit to the U.S. Treasury.
The government should not be involved in that stuff.
Then the government should fund it. Why should they fund it?
Because it's in our societal interest to have these breakthroughs, to have the employment, to have the spin-offs, to have people go start other companies. That is why people want to come to America, to do their research and to start a company and raise their family. The government should not get into.
Okay, so walk me through. Just I don't understand.
Because somebody's going to come in, Sean, and say, okay, we're going to have DEI. We're a shareholder now, right? We don't like the way you're running this company. We don't like the way that you spent that money. You should give some of those drugs for free away. Like, the government should stay out of this. You invest in, you give the money and let the private sector.
Don't give them the money in the first place.
Hold on. All right, Kendall, thank you. We've had it out. Appreciate it. And I want to get
capitalist versus the communist here.
Our next person. Is your name pronounced Bronwyn?
Bronwyn, yeah.
And who's that with you, Bronwyn?
This is Elizabeth. Hello.
Hi, how's it going today? What are you doing today? Are you off school?
Yes.
Yeah. What are you gonna do all day?
Who teaches you? My mom.
Oh, your mom's going to teach you when she's done talking to us. Well, thank you for sharing her. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. And she's cute. Obviously, you've heard that before.
Thank you.
Tell us where you are and what's on your mind. And thank you for joining.
I am calling from Botswana, Africa.
Wow.
Welcome in.
Hi.
Thank you.
What's on your mind?
I started watching you guys just because during the election, I think more than anything, and I'm sure you all know this, is that what happens to America affects the world. And I really felt that. I'm a teacher. I'm currently homeschooling my daughter, but just in terms of like worldview and things like that, and the policy decisions that are made in America definitely trickle down in terms of our own government policies in response to that. And I think my question is, and it's for Sean, I'd like to know. I'm sorry, I'm still learning your system and civics and the things like that. Am I correct? The last supermajority was during the Obama era in the 111th Congress. Is that right?
I think you may know us better than we know. Mark's probably better on that one. That sounds right, but I can't.
They briefly had 60 votes.
That's when they passed Obamacare, right? With
when Arlen Specter changed.
Yeah.
So I think my question is for each of you, for Dan, the trajectory of the Democrats in the future, if you had the next supermajority, what do you think would be passed? And the same question to Sean for the Republicans. And then just Mark, in terms of if you could look at both, what do you say would be passed as a non-partisan person?
Yeah, awesome question. Thank you for that. Thank you for being part of this. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I have no idea, and that's part of the reason we're in the wilderness. I've said this before. If Kamala Harris won, I don't know what her first 100 days would have been focused on. I really don't. And so I think the party, since it passed Obamacare with the supermajority, has largely been intellectually, I don't want to say bankrupt, but stagnant. You got kind of some of the stuff under Biden with infrastructure, which both parties have been trying to do for years. And the clean energy bill was maybe the kind of last thing. They tried it with kind of cap and trade, a version of clean energy, kind of big legislation. But the party has got to orient towards the 21st century and figure out what is it that it's for, what problems is it trying to solve. And if he's on here, Alex Costanellis wrote a text to some of us this weekend pointing out that the Democrats don't have an agenda for the future. And I responded, you are correct.
Sean.
I would say what you're seeing through reconciliation is pretty much a window into what they would do on a larger scale if they could get the 60 votes in the Senate, right? And frankly, why they're doing the kabuki dance on the Senate with some of the floor and ceiling of spending, and why they're trying to get the parliamentarian to rule the way they are. Maybe more immigration, actual reform. But the hardest part, and this is where I think, part of this is driven by the top. When you have the president's going to use their agenda to get through those one or two things that they think. So whoever that person is, and that's the problem for the Dems right now, until they get, a nominee again that articulates that's going to be hard. But I think that you're pretty much seeing what we would do with a supermajority through the reconciliation process now.
Right, because again, just to explain, many of you know, some of you don't, reconciliation is the equivalent of having a supermajority because you can do it with simply a majority under the rules. It limits what can go in that bill. So Sean's right within the areas of things that can be done in reconciliation, but there's some things that the rules don't allow you to do there. I think the Democrats, if they had a supermajority, would probably try to codify abortion rights as a federal standard. It would be one thing they would do. And I think they may well do more things related to civil rights and voting rights. But just as we don't know what the Republican Party is going to look like after Donald Trump, and I don't really take seriously his trolling over a third term, we don't really know what the Democrats are going to be like in terms of once they're back in power. Are they going to go back to being far left, or are they going to have a different point of view? And right now you see, I think, conflicting things. You see a lot of the smartest people in the party who are more moderate saying we need to be more moderate, and here's what we need to emphasize with a particular focus on the economy. And then you see the energy in the party from the Bernie Sanders and AOC wing of the party not giving any ground, not just on economics, but on some of the social issues. So I think that's very much up for grabs, as Dan suggested. How did you start watching Two-Way?
I think I found you through Megyn Kelly.
Great. Well, you're nice to be part of it. And what's the hardest part of homeschooling your daughter?
I love it. I don't find it hard. I am a teacher by profession, and I love to take children. I think all children can inherently learn, and if they're struggling, there's either a problem with them, like do they have a learning disability, or there's a problem with the way you're teaching them. And that's why it breaks my heart for America to hear that you guys spend so much on education, and that basics like reading and writing and numeracy are falling through the cracks. And I just think it's a disservice, because every child comes out just longing to learn. And I'd love to see that back at the forefront of everybody's education.
We all agree with you.
Well
Thank you for being part of it. Grateful to you for coming on. Please come back. Okay. All right, Nick, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind after you unmute. Try it again, Nick.
There we
There you go.
All right. Hey, guys, I'm calling from New Jersey. It's going to be a short time because I'm actually moving to Florida shortly. So I'm very happy about that. Congratulations on all the success on Two-Way. I really enjoy it. I think this platform is fantastic. Getting just sort of normal people like myself to be able to talk to you all is great. Especially Sean. I'm a big fan of yours, Sean. So I appreciate that. Dan, I could not agree with you more about what you said. I don't agree with you a lot. I do agree with your sports teams, okay? And although the Mets overpaid for Juan Soto, but I do agree 100% with you that what you said before about the White House Correspondents Association, you were spot on with that. It's funny to watch this legacy media sort of, kind of cry. It's absolutely hysterical. Two things I just want to ask real quick, and I know we're getting to short on time here. The one thing I don't understand, maybe Sean, you could talk to this, is why did President Trump pluck out a couple of solid congressional seats with Elise Stefanik and Mike Waltz in order to bring them into the administration, given he had such a slim majority? I really didn't understand that. Maybe you could kind of talk about that. And then the second thing I want to ask is, it's kind of unrelated to all this. Does anyone know what's happening with his appeal cases in New York? The one with, Mershon, and then the other one with Engoron and Letitia James. Does anybody know what's going on with that appeals process?
I'll let
Sean.
Mark do I'll let Mark do the legal. I think with Elise, in her case, obviously, her performance on that committee with the college university president got her a lot of credibility with the MAGA base and the president, and obviously wanted to find a role for her. And again, it's a solid seat. Same thing with Waltz. I think less so. I mean, with Waltz, I think he had a relationship with him, really liked his record. And again, it's a safe seat. In Florida, it's an easier case because it was sort of like, okay, we're only going to be out for a couple months. We'll have the quick primary, and then DeSantis plays ball. In New York, I didn't think, I think it's a little more surprising. I don't think anyone really thought about Kathy Hochul playing with the date as much as she did and what that would do. And basically, because Elise went last on the queue, it gave people, I think, some heartburn about what happens if. And I just don't think that people thought it was going to be a problem the way it kind of is on the vote counting. Listen, this is one sort of dirty secret that doesn't get talked about a lot, but there have been 2 deaths of Democratic House members that have allowed this cushion to exist. It's a 2-vote majority because 2 members passed away on the Dem side, and we would be having a much different talk if that hadn't happened. So I think there's a bit of a scare, which is, what if something happens on our side in the interim? How screwed would we be?
I do think that they're going to sweep all 3. I think they're going to sweep Florida, and I think they're going to win Wisconsin as well. That's just my prediction.
You're right, Nick. Thank you, by the way.
Dan, anything you want to say about either of those before I weigh in?
No, I think Sean said it well.
Okay. So Nick, I'll take the opportunity of your question to say I don't know where those cases stand, to make the broader point that we're 3 people doing our best to cover everything and know about everything. Sometimes we don't know, and sometimes we make mistakes. And it's a live program, and we're not super staffed by 10,000 people all around us. So I apologize for not knowing, and I apologize in general when there are errors or ignorance, but we're doing our best, and we'll look it up and see. But I don't know where they stand. It's a good question. I kind of lost track of them once the president was given immunity by the Supreme Court and once he won. So thank you for the question.
But I think actually where I thought you were going, Mark, which is interesting, is I think the idea that all 3 of us who spend a ton of time, it clearly shows that they're not on the radar, right? I mean, to me, it's more, it's sort of the interesting piece of this.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. And good luck with your move. Appreciate it. Don't give up your New York team. So Jason, welcome in. Thanks for being part of Two-Way. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind after you unmute.
I'm in Nashville area. I had to drop out for 20 minutes, so I missed a lot, but wanted to ask, if you did get a chance to get into the White House pool, who would you send? And I know it changes by day, but if you went today, what would you ask? And then the follow-up question to that is, does it really matter? It's like throwing a Nerf grenade at a castle. It seems like these days, not just with the Trump administration, but just asking the press secretary a question. It's so, what are you hoping to get out of it? It's hard to get anything newsworthy out of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, my goal is always to try to serve the public interest. So not gotcha, not trivia, but just ask them to explain it so people can better understand it and to hold them accountable. If I went today, I keep saying I'm going to wear a giant iPad on my chest and let one of you ask a question. But if the technology didn't work or they declined, today I'd probably ask the president, if I got to ask the president a question in the pool, who do you listen to most for advice on tariffs and why? That's probably what I'd ask him today.
Question.
But it changes a lot. Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Let's get Dr. John in, who we haven't seen in a while before we have to go. Doctor, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Love having you.
Speaking of Nashville. Yeah.
Speaking of Nashville.
I think we need to do a show in Nashville.
Yeah, we do.
I've been saying that for months, Dan.
I like it.
Do you think that we should just do the Opry, or could we do the full Ryman?
You know, I don't want to put any pressure on, but the Favreau boys did do the Ryman one time. So there's precedent.
We could fill it. We could fill
for
it.
the most successful political programming being at the Ryman, in which
what is that seat?
You know, it's a lot smaller than you think for how popular it is. It's probably about 2,500, 2,000, maybe less than that. Honestly, we'd
fill that thing.
It's probably less than that, actually.
As I like to say whenever you're here, what's up, Doc?
How we doing? I just had to weigh in. I wasn't going to raise my hand today, but we have like free market Dan versus like, communist adjacent Sean there.
Yes.
And that was a fascinating little
the cavalry.
No, watch out, Dan. I'm kind of with you.
Okay.
If you want it to be a free market in healthcare, let it be a free market. Okay. 354 of the 356 approved drugs from 2010 to 2019 were started out using NIH funding. Okay. So that's the first type. Then those drugs get through. Yes, you have your startups. They get bought by the bigger companies. And then it's illegal for Medicare to negotiate price on those drugs. That's not a free market. We can pretend like, oh, we negotiated on these 10 drugs. That's sort of literal, just like sprinkling nothingness onto the reality that it is illegal for Medicare to negotiate price. So that's not a free market. When you look at the oversight on the FDA side, most drugs don't have to actually be better than the existing drug. They only have to be better than the placebo control. Okay, so a true, like fully disclosed free market would say this drug is not better than what's available for a cheaper price, but because pharma spends more lobbying money than any one other industry, those things don't happen, okay? It's illegal after the ACA for a physician to own a hospital. How would you all feel for a journalist not to be able to own a media company? Or a lawyer not to be able to own a law firm? That's not a free market, right?
But isn't that a regulatory issue, though? I mean, all of them are regulatory issues.
Sure, but why are the regulatory issues minimizing the free market from taking hold, right?
Totally.
So yes, if you want the U.S. healthcare system to be a free market, let it be a free market. Stop subsidizing effectively socialism, communism, whatever you call it, for the big corporations at the expense of patients and small independent practices like pharmacists or physicians or whatever you want to call it. So that's my biggest holdup, is that we're trapped in this in-between where it's not a free market for the people who need the healthcare, but it is subsidized and skewed entirely towards the people paying the people to make the regulatory rules around the entire system, right? So yes, I'm with you to an extent, but then actually let it happen.
Yeah,
how I would frame it.
I mean, I think it's a great point. I mean, look, a lot of pharmaceutical companies, to meet shareholder demands, as you say, buy these smaller startups because they're the innovative companies. And I mean, I think most people know this. For every drug that hits and is a financial, windfall, there's dozens that fail and they don't. And that is the kind of balancing act that the pharmaceutical industry constantly kind of rides. I mean, look, John, I agree. Democrats have talked for years about letting, the Medicare and Medicaid negotiate directly, and it should happen.
So what is there a possible free market for the largest purchaser of a product to not be able to negotiate the price of that product? Is there a possible free market explanation for that other than just sheer bribery? I just can't come up with one, and I'm not I just can't.
We're up against the clock, so Sean.
I know. I would just say, look, I don't know how I'm not the free market guy in this. I mean, I argue one of two things. One, get the government out of funding, right? Which I know some people disagree with because of the nature of how drugs get funded. So that's fine. One, that's very free market. Get out of the business and then let everyone else reap the benefits of any other company would. Two, if you're going to have the government do it, then they get to reap some of the profits, i.e. we as taxpayers. I don't see how that's not because how does one company get government money and then they get to reap all the benefits, but another company that invests in it doesn't get? To me, the government's getting ripped off. In fact,
the taxpayers are getting ripped off. The government, if it depends how you define government. If it's the people, yes, we are getting ripped off. The government is doing just fine, as we're seeing. The DC government people are fine.
Doctor, one question, one or two sentences. Should we be concerned about the measles outbreak?
In one or two sentences, no. Right now, we're about at a quarter of what we were in 2019 in overall cases. That case, I don't want to get into the details, but there's a lot of more to the actual case of the child that died in Texas. It's obviously a tragic story. It's not quite how it's being portrayed, and I'd love to get into that another time. But I will say real quick, for all the people who thought RFK was going to be crazy, so far he's going after making formula not poisonous. He's going after allowing the GRAS regulations, right? So allowing the companies to dictate whether or not the product in the food is safe or not. And he's trying to get cell phones out of schools. These, again, should be 95-5 issues that Democrats should have been leading all along. And the fact that he's doing it under Trump really shows, to me, the state of the Democratic Party.
All right, I want you to come back at some point soon and talk about RFK in general and go into more depth.
I would love that.
Because there are lots of areas of criticism too. Thank you for joining. Always love to see it. Thank you. All right, a couple more programs coming up later today. First at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Meghan McCain happy hour with a great guest. I love Ryan Girdusky. If you never heard Ryan, join. He and Meghan are going to have a great conversation about everything that's going on, and he's a brilliant guy, and we haven't heard from Meghan now in several days, so you can find out where she is on a bunch of things. And then at 6 o'clock tonight, I will be back with Two-Way Tonight. Amongst those joining us will be Ron Fournier, the former AP reporter who's agreed to come talk about what he wrote on Substack about all the ways he thinks the White House Correspondents Association is failing to live up to their public responsibility for the public interest. And then tomorrow night, don't forget, on Two-Way Tonight, our special episode with Dina Powell, Senator David McCormick, about their book, Who Believed in You, a great episode where we'll talk a lot about mentoring with surprise guests who are featured in their book. So join us for that again tomorrow night. That's all for today. Guys, anything else you want to say before we go?
Sean, who you got tonight, man?
Great discussion. Actually, we've got some secret tapes that have been uncovered on JFK. It's conversations about Lyndon Baines Johnson. We'll play them for you.
All right.
Is that an exclusive?
Well, as far as you know, yes.
Okay, as far as I know, yes. All right, so Sean tonight at 6. I'll be on also at 6. You can watch us both whenever you wish on demand. And the three of us will be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Grateful to everybody for joining and for those who asked questions. Thank you so much. We'll see you a little bit later today and then again in the morning. Have a good day.